Okay, so today we're going to talk about what type of graph you should make when you're making a graph during science class. And the type of graph that you're going to make is going to depend on the type of data that you collected. There's two types of data that we're going to discuss today. The first is going to be discrete, and the second is continuous. Okay, so discrete data is going to be any kind of data that is qualitative. So if it is including a category, words, or descriptions, it's going to be discrete data. When you have discrete data, you're always going to graph that as a bar graph because the idea is to have the graph match your data. So you're going to make it a bar graph because the graphs are distinct and separate and discrete. There's nothing in between those graphs to connect to them. There's no points of data that have been collected in between those categories or those words or those descriptions. So the idea is that your levels of IV are separate, and so your graph should have separate bars. Here we're graphing where bullying occurs: class, bus, and hallway. And so those are categories, those are words, those are descriptions, and they are three separate discrete things, so you have separate discrete bar graphs. The next kind of data is continuous data, and this is going to be data that's qualitative. So if your independent variable is a number, then you're going to make a bar graph. We're looking for things that are continuous and show continuous change. Sometimes it can be over time, but not always. But if there's continuous change between the data points, if there's something happening between this data point that you measured and your next data point and your next data point, then you want to put a line there and make that a line graph to show, hey, something was happening, something was changing from the time that I chose to collect data to the next time that I chose to collect data. So in this case, the levels of your independent variable here are connected. There can be something in between them. I could have, instead of weight of the frog, instead of having a frog that weighed about 30 grams, I could have tested one that weighed about 50, and I could have had a data point there. So here's a couple of examples. The first example here, you're looking at the brand of running shoe. Again, you're going to look at your IV. If your IV is qualitative, if it's separate categories, then that means it's discrete data and it should be graphed as a bar graph. If your data, if your independent variable is quantitative, if it's connected numbers, if I could have picked a number, a data point to measure in between, then you're going to have continuous data and you're going to show that with a line graph.